Easy, how are we?
I'm good, Sean. The next few words out of my mouth now are a bit of a risk.
Oh God, right. Easy on the
So
editor now.
we're either saying, congratulations, you got married, or can't believe you legged it. So as people listen to this on a Monday, you're either a married man or a single man. So it could go either way. It's not too late, Sean. I'm
well,
not
well,
there,
co-
I'm not there to guide you away from marriage. It's fine. But I just thought I'd let all of our listeners know. Come Monday, stay tuned for the update. What happens this weekend?
Context is key. We're a little over 36 hours away from getting married, and here I am recording podcast. We just recorded today's episode in full. We're recording the intro. I got to edit together, spend the night doing that, and I'm sure I am needed for a lot of things around the house and stuff to do right now. But when we
At
say
least you
we'll
have
have a
your
podcast
priorities.
out
At
every
least you have your
Monday,
priorities
we
straight.
will have a
That's
podcast out every month. You know what I was going to do? Because I was actually on Sundays we did the intro. Saturday, because it was during the annual Celtic Plate we did our intro, and that's what we hadn't got an update on at the time. And you're like, oh, I'm not running because you're struggling with plantar fasciitis. I haven't ran in 3-4 weeks. We touched on that in this week's episode of the podcast. I was kind of like, I think I need to run just to have something to talk about in the intro. But no, you talk about me and you talk about me running, and that's doing a legger for the wedding. She could probably she overhears just this side of the conversation. She doesn't hear what you're saying. She just hears
I
me
never
going, yeah,
said
no,
anything,
I'd do a
Sean. I never said
Lego before
anything.
Thursday.
This is all you, just admitting your confessions, and you're sitting
Oh,
here.
Eric, I think we need to go straight into this podcast guest for this week.
Yeah, but it is those who are now. Summer is coming. We came through a heat wave. Everyone is starting to get out. Run clubs are starting to be active. It is a good time for people, if you haven't already started, to lace up the shoes and do get out. It is a good time of year to start into summer events. A lot of people know Dublin is coming. If you're in any way interested in the summer series, it's now time to start going for the 1K run or the 2K run and seeing how things are and progressing yourselves forward. As we say all the time, and my own training, even for this one, working with a coach can be a good way to get involved as well. So myself and Emma are trying to get to Dunshaughlin just so I can race Lorcan Fisher. But it's good to have someone else do the thinking for you as well. And that is a good segue into this one, because sometimes you do need someone to think of everything for you.
Absolutely. And this episode of the podcast, we talk about more than just running strategy, stuff like that. Mindset and things come into, we get into nutrition. We get into a lot of different aspects of health and well-being and anything else you want to add before this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast?
No, this one is a great one. Lots of nuggets. Have a pen and paper ready. It's an absolute amazing guest as always. And it's time for this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast.
Let's go. Our next guest on the Any Given Monday podcast has 10 years of clinical experience as a doctor, while she has also achieved a master's in sports and exercise medicine at UCC, combining them both to launch Ireland's first lifestyle medicine clinic specifically designed for athletes. Dr. Aisling Farrell, welcome to this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast. How are you getting on?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I'm delighted to be here today.
I'm delighted you're here because I've had problems with Sean for years. How much would it cost for a consult for him? Now, it's going to take a lot of your time. It's going to take a lot of your energy. I don't know where you start. I don't know where you finish, but it's
Give my work cut out for me, so.
Oh, no, oh, and the rest. But Aisling, you are so welcome on this podcast. For those who haven't met or heard of you, we are going to dive into the world of, I suppose, lifestyle medicine and that of the amateur athlete, I suppose, who are looking for advice. But before we do that, we need to know, how did you get into sport, and what is are you into running, or where did it all start for you?
Okay, so I suppose I'm very much the recreational athlete, and I like giving myself different fitness goals and challenges. Certainly, I think I probably started off with a love of basketball and kind of team training when I was younger. And then as I got into college, I really fell in love with strength and resistance training. And at that time, I suppose the community that I was involved with was big into bodybuilding, and I fell into the world of bodybuilding competing. So I competed in 2016 and 2018, and and I was delighted to qualify to represent Ireland internationally at that time. But I suppose kind of going on from that, then my focus kind of shifted more to functional fitness, and I became involved in CrossFit and F45 over the years after that. And then I think last year I was living in a beautiful part of Cork City, and you could just see like people running up and down the marina, and I was like, God, I'd love to get into running. So I suppose I set myself the goal of like a 5K, a 10K. And then after that, I was like running quite regularly and competed like 2 half marathons last year. So I was absolutely delighted to kind of have switched things up. And I suppose over the last 12 months then, combining like the love of running and strength and resistance training, I have just dived deep into Hyrox training, and that's what I have been focusing on for the last 12 months. So I'm super excited because I've got my kind of first international Hyrox event at the end of this month in Riga. So I've been training for that for the last little while. So yeah, my road in sport has been quite varied. But you know what I love? I think sometimes you can set yourself up as like, I'm just a runner, or I'm just into strength and resistance training. And really, I suppose I'm very often impressed with like how much the body can adapt and change, and with different kind of fitness goals, you can really push your boundaries. So yeah, I suppose I have a different mix of sports that I enjoy.
Which one do you pick there first, Eric? What sport pops in
No.
there?
So I'm gonna start first. CrossFit versus Hyrox. As
Straight into it.
no, I need to know because I hated CrossFit. I just thought, I don't know, maybe you can back me up, or you can prove me wrong with this, being somewhat of an expert in it. I think it's more dangerous for the average person to get in and compete in CrossFit as opposed to Hyrox, for example, which seems to be more functional movement that the everyday person can do as long as they train for it and build up the endurance for it. That's my opinion. Please prove me wrong.
Oh my goodness, I think you're going to try and get me in trouble before we even start.
No. But genuinely, no, to ask it in a nicer way. How did you find the
they're
transition?
very different. Obviously, there's so much running involved in the Hyrox event that I think certainly having had that build up and increasing of my amount of running that I did last year has certainly helped me with training for Hyrox. I do enjoy CrossFit, and I still occasionally will train in CrossFit too. But yeah, certainly I think the running has been the biggest change for me with that.
And in terms of like, obviously CrossFit was so big 10, 15 years ago. It became what Hyrox is currently doing now.
Yeah.
What was the pull for you across as an athlete that's just interested in using your body and trying something new and pushing boundaries? What was it that attracted to you?
That's exactly what you said. It's pushing boundaries. It's a new challenge, and it's trying something that I haven't done before, and really pushing myself in regards to, you know, having that endurance and being able to train and compete for, you know, an hour and a half. I don't know yet. I'm hoping for an hour 15, but we'll see how that goes the end of the month. But it's that challenge and that goal of constantly trying to improve and push yourself. I think that's what it is for me.
And just for context, Sean, what time did you do it in?
I had the Christmas markets and stuff. There's no Christmas markets in me Riga at the end of the month, so we're going to talk about my time for that one. I will switch gears completely though. Mentally, which one of those sports were the toughest? And the reason I asked that is because when you bring up bodybuilding, bikini bodybuilding, like obviously Eric alluded to there, my time's not that great doing Hyrox, but even with runs, marathons and stuff, there's times off. If I did a half marathon leading up, I might have a few pints of stuff afterwards or whatever it's in races. But bodybuilding seems to be, you know, it's not just in the gym. You got to be completely strict, I'm assuming, outside the gym as well. Like, I assume that must be mentally very difficult to keep going with.
That was tough, and I think that was tough from, I suppose, a mental point of view, but also a physical point of view, because you're really pushing your boundaries with a sport like that. You know, you have to be, as you said, incredibly disciplined from a dietary perspective, but also that you're hitting your training goals as well. So certainly, I think, and the duration of time that you have to be so strict with you know, that kind of particular plan, up to 12, 16 weeks, depending. So you do certainly need to have that kind of mental focus and keep that end goal in mind of what you want to do. So I think from a mental point of view, that's the sport that I found most difficult, that you're staying on plan consistently and really regularly throughout.
And after that was a new challenge, and that should do CrossFit something easier. We're really butchering the CrossFit people today in the podcast.
No, I like the challenge and changing things up. No more than yourselves, lads.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
It's one thing about the bodybuilding as well. And like we said, it's all about discipline and probably more so habit. And I think probably Habits are one thing that'll probably keep you going with your discipline when the motivation disappears. How do you manage that? Obviously, having a busy career as a doctor, when a day in the life of me and Sean can derail us. We mightn't get for a run, we mightn't get for this. All of a sudden, there's a chipper on the table. Well, for me anyway, I don't know about Sean, but it's there's simple things where I always said habits will come in. For you being so busy, and I suppose it's good to talk about your experience because you may or may not advise people on this one. But how did you manage that in your life and stay that discipline? Because bodybuilding is one where you have to be on all the time.
Sure, you certainly have to have a level of discipline, but I think, if you're competing in any sport at kind of a high level like that, you do have to have your discipline with that. For me, it was about creating routines and creating structures and smarter, I suppose, programming, smarter recovery strategies that I was able to kind of keep up with the demands of the sport. So certainly kind of getting in structures and programs in place for me was what helped for sure.
Tired, aching muscles, and overworked feet?
Discover Ultra Pure Ice Cold Menthol Gel, your instant, fast acting, and cooling savior.
Powered by menthol and boosted by arnica, rosemary, eucalyptus, and peppermint essential oils, it's a powerhouse of natural recovery.
Massage Ultra Pure Ice Cold Menthol Gel into your legs, arms, back, neck, shoulders, or our personal favorite,
Hey, easy, Sean.
feet, and feel the instant cooling sensation.
Grab a tube today. Your body will thank you.
Proudly made in County Mayo by an Irish-owned, award-winning family business, Ultra Pure blends quality, care, and value into every product.
Available in pharmacies and health stores nationwide or shop online. Find out more at ultrapurelabs.ie or on our new website, anygivenrunday.com. Now, let's get back to this podcast.
Ashling, that's hard for someone doing a 9-to-5 job, but like reading your credentials at the start of this podcast, and you're masters, you're a doctor, you have 10 years of clinical experience. How are you combining all this with and having those goals outside the gym and life in general? Like, how hard is that balance of everything?
Well, I think that's certainly one of the reasons why I created my clinic, because that is an issue. You're balancing a really busy, demanding career, oftentimes social commitments with your family, but then also the demands of your training and making sure that your recovery is on point and your nutrition is on point. And that is certainly trying to manage that balance is really, really tough. And it takes a lot of kind of structure and I suppose planning in place to get that there. But I certainly found that was one of the biggest challenges that I faced over the years, trying to manage that. And it's one of the reasons that I suppose I developed the clinic, to be able to help other people that are struggling with similar kind of problems to that.
So if your name was Lyric Lawless and you were struggling with your habits, and so no, look, I understand a lot of it, but if you were someone who's listening to this, what kind of factors are we thinking about to be like, do you know what? Maybe I should reach out to Ashling, or what kind of elements in our lives are some of the mistakes that people are making that we don't realize we're making them. And it's actually, I suppose, we're working against the grain all the time. We're finding it difficult. So who is your kind of candidate that you meet on a day-to-day as an amateur athlete? And what are the biggest mistakes you see when people are coming through your doors for that first meeting?
Well, I don't think like some mistakes would probably be something. I think everyone's trying their best and everyone's trying to work against a really, really busy schedule for the most part. A lot of the people that I would work with in general would be, say, you're busy athletes, people that are working full-time jobs, they're managing their families, they're managing their kiddies as well, but they're also training at a really, really high level. And I'll often see that they'll struggle with different things. For example, time management was one of the big aspects in it, and trying to fit everything in. And certainly I'll find people and helping them out, getting to those routines and kind of getting those kind of structures in place that I spoke about earlier, so that it kind of falls into their routine and a part of normal for them. One of the things that I will see is people that can often come in, and overtraining can be an issue, certainly for some athletes when they're coming in. Do you know what I mean? They're trying to maximize every single minute of their available time, so that they're training and pushing themselves really, really hard, because they're trying to make up for, they mightn't be able to get one session in. And And certainly that can lead to things like physical exhaustion and mental exhaustion and an inability to recover in between sessions. So overtraining is certainly an area that I'd see. I suppose going on from that, lack of recovery or perhaps skipping out on recovery can certainly be an issue for people that, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to aim and get my 7 hours sleep at night, I'm like, no, I'm setting my alarm o'clock in the morning, I'm getting my training in before I bring the kids to school, or I'm going to train late at night because I've got so much work meetings and things like that going on, that people are really pushing their bodies so hard without giving them enough time, to repair and restore and recover effectively. I think another area that I'd see would be nutrition with people. Do you know what I mean? People are kind of rushing to eat. They're running out the door. They're grabbing a roll. They're just kind of making choices at what's convenient, I suppose, in order to try and save time. And oftentimes it means that they're not getting the, I suppose, sufficient amount of calories in, or maybe the appropriate macronutrient breakdown or supplements. So strategic meal planning and getting those kind of structures in place is something that I will help my patients with quite a lot, and trying to optimize things like their meal planning, like their sleep, and different recovery strategies to making sure that they're getting the most out of their training, because these people are training so hard that I work with, no more than yourselves. You're putting a huge amount of effort and time to kind of reach your maximum performance. So it's just trying to help those people find that balance and put structures in place.
What signs do you see, Aisling, when someone comes into you that it is overtraining as opposed to sleep's really the issue, or nutrition and calories is really the issue? Do you see something where you go, this is a sign of fatigue and that, as opposed to someone being not having the energy to do it because they haven't got the right calories in?
Yeah, like there certainly will be some signs that I would check for with my patients that I'm seeing coming in the door, and we'll kind of go through this in quite a lot of detail, say during my initial consultations. Oftentimes, and I know you guys would probably relate to this, you'll have that twinge that you're like, look, it's grand, it's fine.
Grand. It doesn't hurt when I run, so it's not a problem.
You say it again?
It doesn't hurt when I run, so it's not a problem.
It's not a
I've
problem,
said those words in the podcast.
We said it last week. We said it last week, Sean.
But you're kind of you're maybe ignoring some of the signs that our body is giving us, that we're perhaps pushing ourselves a little bit harder. One of, I suppose, the most common presentations would be that kind of fatigue beyond normal. That you're kind of needing those energy drinks, or you're needing a lot of caffeine in the morning, and you're feeling maybe a lot more tired after a training session, for example, than what you normally would. And that sometimes that fatigue can be a sign that the body is starting to get overloaded. And oftentimes that's not just because of the amount of training, but say it could be the amount of stress that's going on at home or within work, and all of that can build up. So fatigue can be one. Another area that can often present would be people that are coming in with, say, recurrent injuries, or so things like, for example, I've had a couple of patients coming in and maybe presenting with stress fractures or overuse injuries or tendonitis injuries that they're not recovering effectively from, or maybe the recovery is taking them a little bit longer. Oftentimes it can be people then are coming in with, say, infections like, recurrent upper respiratory tract infections, that as soon as they've had one infection, they seem to get another one again. And again, it's just that recovery isn't, I suppose, as effective as it could be. One of the areas, I suppose, that I'm looking out for, and we kind of touched on it there in regards to the making sure they've got adequate food on board, would be a thing called relative energy deficiency in sport. And that's something that I kind of look out for, particularly with my athletes that are trained for really high intensity. And relative energy deficiency, or REDS, it's basically low energy availability. So that can affect athletes of all genders in all sports and at all levels. And essentially what it means is that the calories that we're taking in from our food and drink is not meeting the demands of the energy that we're putting out. So through our training or through our bodily processes. And that's something that can creep in actually really easily. It can be for people if they're increasing up their training intensity, but they're not increasing up their nutrients. Or for example, people that are dieting, but dieting over a prolonged period of time. And I will always ask about that, and kind of symptoms that people can be having. That fatigue certainly can be one. Repeated injuries, mood changes can be an area. And for some girls, that can be things like losing their periods or missing those periods. So that's something that we absolutely want to avoid, and certainly an area that I will check with my patients when they first present to me.
Is this an issue where people like me and people like Sean, we go from zero to hero? We do nothing, we're sedentary, and then all of a sudden I'm doing an Ironman in 16 weeks. But do you see a lot of patients who come in that I'm going to ask your advice for people who may be listening. Can we take on too much at once? Is a good method of, so people who may be saying, "Do you know what, I want to get my body fat percentage down because I'd like to see if I can be a bodybuilder, or I need to increase my ability or my anaerobic capacity because I want to try high rocks." Are there people that take on the diet, take on the exercise, take on too much all at the same time? Or is there a methodology that people should consider before throwing all the sweets out and going 3 times a day? Or what way should people look at that when they're taking on a new challenge?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think there's lots to unpack in that for sure, Eric. You didn't give me an easy question there.
All right. I just need you to do all the talking for another 45 minutes, please, Ashley.
Well, when I look at someone when they're kind of taking on a challenge, I would kind of say, when we're sitting down with somebody, kind of, what's your goals? What is it that you want to achieve? And I'll kind of look at it, okay, from a kind of a SMART goals perspective. So be really specific about what we want to do. Can we measure it? Can we achieve it? And is it realistic within the time frame? So that's the kind of the structure that I will use. So if someone, for example, they're completely sedentary, they're not exercising, they tell me they want to do an Ironman in 6 weeks, we really kind of take back and say, okay, is that going to be feasible? Are we actually going to be realistically able to do that? For certain people, I suppose there is.
There are some outliers among us.
They're always
outliers
there.
among us.
It's taken everyone's in individual background in sports, in what they're currently able to do from a training perspective, and I suppose that's taken into account what we were chatting about earlier. There's stresses going on with life, work, professional, social, etc., and seeing what is going to be realistically achievable for that person. People surprise me every day from what they can do, but certainly I think we need to be realistic about what we can do and in what time frame we'll be able to achieve it.
We've talked about sleep as well. When I find I'm in a good training rhythm or a good battle rhythm or whatever you want to call it, I find I get the best sleep I have. And I find training really affects my sleep in a positive, because I'm feeling tired at around a natural time of 10. I'm naturally waking up at 6, so I'm getting 8 hours. How important is sleep for recovery?
I'm actually really happy that you brought this up, because I think sleep for me is one of the most underrated pillars of recovery, for sure. Particularly athletes that are like that, where you're saying training at a high level, sleep can be one of the first things to go, because we're trying to squeeze in maybe early morning sessions, or we're training really late at night. And athletes are definitely at a high risk of getting insufficient sleep in. Oftentimes as well, people kind of, as they're going through life, they'll have young kiddies and sleep is disturbed and all of those kind of things. So sleep is one of those things that I will sit down and try and put together a really solid plan with my patients when they come in. And I think definitely there's I don't know if you've kind of guys have come across this on social media recently, this kind of glorification of getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and having a 2-hour morning routine, and you're training and you've all of your work done before 7 o'clock in the morning. That is completely.
That video that went viral there a couple of weeks ago. I can't be real. Your man got up 4 in the morning and he did all these meditation things and drank his water and jumped into a pool, and 9 o'clock he's ready for work. I'm like, what, 5 hours morning routine? What's going on? But yeah, so many clicks and stuff and so many copycats afterwards. It's social media must annoy you, Aisling.
Well, I don't know if it annoys me so much. I think there's lots of good things about social media, but certainly kind of that glorification of we don't need sleep, we need to be on all of the time. I don't think it's particularly helpful. But I suppose we're looking at social media and say screen time and devices. There's a really interesting study that done by Deloitte actually this year. I don't know if you've guys seen it, but they were looking at people's uses of screen times and their devices. And I thought it was so interesting. It was 70% of people stated that they spent too much time on their devices, and there was over 50% of people that admitted that they stay awake much longer than they intended to because of their nighttime use of devices. So I think being on your phones quite a lot and kind of that glorification of we need to be up super early and getting loads done, that kind of takes back from the importance of sleep. Sleep, when I'm looking at it, it's really important from a muscle recovery and growth point of view. When we sleep, we produce growth hormone, and that helps repair our muscles overnight when we're sleeping. So that's really important from that. It helps with our cognitive function and decision making. So I suppose when we sleep, that's when we consolidate all our memories. So if you're at training and you're learning a new tactic or you're learning a new skill, it's during your sleep at nighttime that memory is really consolidated and formulated. So So that helps you perform better the next day. Sleep always helps with our immune system, and it also helps managing our appetite and our hunger. So particularly if you're on, say, like a weight loss attempt, sleep is really important for that perspective. So there's loads of reasons why I think sleep is really important, and putting together a kind of a sleep strategy or sleep plan for my patients is certainly something we'll spend a lot of time on during the consultations.
Aisling, with sleep, is longer better?
So it depends. So generally, I will say about 7 to 9 hours is what we should be aiming for. Where sometimes, though, do you know, like if you're coming up to a really high intensity period of training or competition, you could benefit from maybe even a little bit more. So 8 hours to 10 hours. Now, ideally, we'll have that all in kind of, say, one solid, consolidated 8 hours or 7 hours kind of period of time. That's not possible oftentimes for parents, and if we're doing shift work and things like that. So sometimes I'll bring in strategies like maybe small naps during the day and things like that too.
Yes.
So
So
you're
define a small
magic
nap,
word
though.
we needed. I love a nap.
He
So
hears nap and he
science-
takes 2 hours after a big lunch. So how long is a nap before he gets too happy over there?
A nap for me would be anything from about maybe 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, Aisling, you were my favorite until
See,
about
I
2
knew
seconds
it.
ago.
I could see the big look. He was like 2 hours after a big feed. Perfect. Because I've had, like, I remember a few years ago, I did the Art O'Neill. It went horribly for me, and this was not the reason it went horribly for me. But one of the things was, I wanted, so it's an overnight run, and I wanted to get a bit of sleep in during the day to try and bank on sleep. But I slept like 2-3 hours during the daytime, and I got up completely groggy. I was like trying to, like, I had a compass attached to a cable tie thing in a package. And I remember cutting that. I nearly sliced my finger off. Next half an hour I was holding that. I just wasn't awake. I remember I got there to sign up, and I lost my head torch or something like that as well. I just wasn't with it completely, because anytime I'm struggling and I oversleep for like an hour or two on the couch, I wake up 10 times worse trying to do my day-to-day things, lose my keys and all sorts of things. So there's too much sleep for me. Whereas that Eric, that's Eric's dreamland. He's very happy
trained.
there.
You just haven't trained. There's the trained and there's the untrained, Sean. The untrained. But over 20 minutes, obviously, knowing what I know about sleep, you have REM sleep, you have deep sleep. Obviously, going over that 20 minutes, we're moving towards that deep cycle, which is causing that grogginess. Is that why we're saying 15 to 20-minute power nap is enough to get you going?
Yeah, and also I suppose you don't want to disrupt your circadian rhythm or your own natural body clock. So that's the kind of the time that we feel sleepy and the time that we wake up. So we don't want to impact that so much. And also, I suppose, impacting our ability to fall asleep later on in the evening time as well.
I've done it both way. I never have a problem going to sleep. The problem is getting out of bed. I am not a morning gym person. Like, I'll go to bed at 10 and be like, right, up at 6, 8 hours sleep. I'll still snooze till 8 and go, sure, I got the 8 hours. We'll still squeeze it in the training session somewhere. That is how I take it on. I want to touch on something that anyone who's listening who's done a marathon, half marathon maybe, but definitely a marathon, where they've done a 16-week training block and they complete their marathon. It's happened to me numerous times, even after Barcelona was our recent one, the fall off the cliff. And I say it because, one, mentally, I can't, I don't even want to look at my shoes. I put them on. I just feel tired all the time. I am so hungry every minute of the day. And this goes on for maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, until I start to just come back to life again. Is that what we're looking at in terms of fatigue, and how can people best manage that? Because we have people on this podcast that we're doing marathons every week, whereas I'm like, I can't, I'm really not myself for about 3 weeks after something like that. How do you manage that element of the post-marathon?
I think there's a couple of areas in that for sure. Certainly in the mental build up, you know, you're building up towards this goal for weeks, months ahead, that you have this data in your head that it's all coming in, and then it happens, and exactly that, you're kind of like a little bit lost as you're like, well, what do I do now? You know, do I sign up for another marathon? Do I do it again? What do I do? And certainly you can feel a little bit lost after that. So having kind of a post-marathon plan in place, and maybe it's going to be, well, you know, for the next couple of weeks, I'm really going to focus on my mobility, or I'm going to focus on another area that you have that goal. I think I found that particularly after I competed some of the bodybuilding competitions, for me, for sure, that you have this date in your head you've been working towards, and then what do you do afterwards? So having that plan in place from a mental health point of view, is really important that you have a plan and a structure coming out of a big goal like that, number one. Number two, then I suppose it's the physical strain that you're putting under your body when you're doing a high endurance event like that. And that's why it's really important that we have good recovery strategies in place leading up to the event. So that's things like, as we spoke about earlier, our sleep, having our nutrition in point, and that we're managing the other stresses in our life. So, like our work stressors and et cetera, et cetera. We've good stress management techniques in place so that when we kind of are that training and that intensity is building up to coming up towards the fitness goal, that we are still maintaining our recovery and that we're, I suppose, not pushing ourselves too far. Obviously, when we're doing big events like that, we are really pushing our boundaries, but we don't want to kind of extend that so much that we're getting sick afterwards and it's taking us weeks and months to recover afterwards.
Touching on the mental side of things there, Aisling, when you one of your posts, you talked about resiliency, and you said sport is emotional and that negative thoughts are performance limiters. How much does the mental game come into this? Because I know afterwards, mentally, when Eric's talking about that, I'm more so from the mental side of just like, it's just a big downer, especially after Barcelona. The big build we have in marathon was just like, but then building up to that, I sometimes when I go to marathons, and it's a long-winded question, even Eric's like, oh, you've 3:30, you've done your training. I'm like, I don't think I have. I don't think it's there. And then the day I had to just blank that out. And it was one of those days where I did, but we've talked many times in the podcast when it comes to 5K, I'm like, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. 3K in, there's a bush, jump in, done. I don't actually do that, but I really do want it. But mentally, I'm dead. I'm done.
Yeah, the mental side of things is hugely important, isn't it?
Hmm.
For I think whatever sport or whatever goal it is that you have in mind, the mental side of things is massively important. And having kind of a couple of different strategies in place is crucial, I think, to optimizing your performance. But also, as you said, afterwards that you have a plan in place that you're continuously feeling well. There's a couple of things, resilience for sure, feeling, I suppose, and your own ability to complete whatever goal it is that you've set out to achieve. Things like stress management techniques. Oftentimes I'll use, say, visualization with my patients or, guided meditations occasionally will help people too from that side of things. One of the things I really like, and you guys might have seen this, I think it was probably last year or so, was a lot of the GAA players, they'll have like positive words and written on their hands or on the wrist or on the back of the arm. So, it might be strong or fast or determined. So kind of when you're in that game and you're in that situation and it's high pressure and it's high stakes and you see that and you're like, I am strong, I am fast, I am driven. And you would be able to, it's just that little bit of an additional push, I suppose.
I've written things on Sean's head some nights, but they're not as positive as them. Actually, when we're talking about the positivity and stuff like that, body positivity is a big issue now. Because we've talked about social media, where you are seeing people saying they're doing certain things, they're probably doing something totally different. When it comes to diet, how important is it to take on the right kind of diet? Where should people be going for information? Obviously, to you is one source of information, but how do we wade our way through what's true, what's not? For example, we're talking about, if I can give you one, intermittent fasting. You can find any amount of information online of how to fast while training. Is it better to train fasted or after carbs or all of this? But I can, in the space of 10 minutes, have contradictory information on absolutely everything.
Yeah.
How do we wade our way through the fake news as such? And how should people kind of look for the best information?
It's really hard, isn't it? Like there's so much. And I think like if you go on social media, be that Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, one week it's intermittent fasting, the next week it's keto, the next minute it's juice dieting, or, there's a different fad all of the time. And I think that accounts for dieting strategies, but often say different supplements that we should be on, and it's an absolute minefield out there. And I think I certainly struggled with that when I was coming out of college because, although I had trained so hard to become a doctor, there was very little for me when I was in medical school regarding nutrition and regarding exercise and all of that. And that's why I suppose I went back and I did additional training in lifestyle medicine and sports nutrition, because like that, it's really hard to navigate the facts. I look at kind of overall, kind of what kind of calorie intake do I need over the course of the full day, and then breaking down to kind of what particular macronutrients, for example, that I might need for my specific size, gender, what sport and activity levels that I'm doing. And can I get what I need from whole foods, I suppose, as opposed to going maybe to different supplementations and things like that. I suppose I'm simple. I try and bring it back to basics. What calories do we need to support our training? What macronutrient breakdown do we need from that? And then once we've that fitted in, is there any additional supplementation that I may need after that? So I'll kind of use evidence-based resources for that.
Looking to recover faster, train harder, and perform better?
And then what?
Perform Nutrition is one of Ireland's leading sports nutrition brands with a number of great tasting protein powders, a range of vitamins, as well as other supplements such as creatine. All products are made in the GMP facility in the west of Ireland, and they have a range of batch tested and informed sports certified products. Perform is trusted by a number of Olympians, High Rocks champions such as Sean Noble, he was in the podcast.
Yeah, right, he was.
Also CrossFit Games athletes such as Emma McQuaid and many more. Perform's goal is to offer the highest quality, best tasting nutrition products for competitive prices. And now you can get an extra 25% off all products with the code AGR on their website, performnutrition.com.
25%. I'm typing it in now. And don't forget, we are supporting Irish companies. You are supporting this podcast by listening to this advert. So support Irish, get behind your podcast and get behind your local businesses. And until then, let's get back to the podcast.
Just on that, Aisling, I'm going to use myself as an example here in this one. When it comes, obviously, we have macronutrients, protein's a big one for training. And I'm like, the easiest way I consume protein. So one of them you would see in like some supermarkets that have like the protein yogurt kind of proteins where they've got like 20 grams of protein and stuff like that. And I'm a very easy person with my meals. So when I'm in the gym in the mornings, I've got like a half-hour break and I have a bit of granola and I have the protein yogurt in there with that because I'm like, that's an easy way to get 20 grams. I'm getting some whole food. I'm getting a bit of breakfast. I'm getting a bit of calories in. The counter argument I've seen that lately is I've seen two arguments to it. One, it's highly processed, the protein and stuff to get that 20 grams. They're saying, I don't know. They're saying a lot of these protein stuff are highly processed. There's no way you shouldn't be having that. You should have Greek yogurt. I don't have the Greek yogurt because I don't want to open up, have some in the tub, and in 2-3 days later and it's gone off. The reason I don't have milk in that in the morning because I know, one, someone's going to drink it on me. Two, if I have any sort of sour milk on it, I'm like a sour milk, I won't eat for days after that. It's just one of my biggest icks. So I have something that's easy for me to have. There's a word for that that's at the top of me tongue.
Convenience.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're all right. I've got you, Sean. I've got
something
you.
that's very convenient to get that protein in, to get the calories in. So convenience versus high processed. And that's something I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of people talk about on social media on different ends. Where do you stand on that scale?
So I suppose I'm very much pro if we avoiding high processed food as much as we possibly can. But when we look at the practicalities of that, getting the high volume of protein that we will need if we're training at a high intensity. For some people, that can be 1.5 grams per kilo of body weight would be general, but that can go up if you're training at a higher intensity. So for example, a 70 kg person may need 140 grams of protein, and that over the course of the day is huge. I suppose, first of all, what I'm trying to do is, can we break this down that we're having regular protein, for example, we'll use that protein, for example, we're having regular protein throughout the day so that we're keeping our stores full. And again, then we're looking at how can we fit this in. Ideally, we're going to aim for whole foods over highly processed foods. But certainly to try and get that level of protein in, it can be really, really hard without going to, some processed foods, for example, like your whey protein and things like the packet. I think a balance is realistic, and we have to be realistic to people's lifestyles and what's affordable and what that they can fit into their dietary plan. So ideally whole foods, and if we need to supplement with maybe some processed foods then after that, but we do our best to kind of aim for whole foods as much as possible.
How do you train? Why is train like a woman?
Train like a woman.
Have you ever trained with you, Sean?
If I say that, see, I knew he'd go with that. But if I say something like that out loud, train like a woman, I'm probably going to get a slap off a woman. But what does that mean for when you have that in your social? I'm taking that your quote, by the way, to lead into your talk. That's not a. Eric, help me out here. I'm digging a hole.
You're going, Sean. You're doing great. What was that you said again? Train like a.
So train like a woman. The reason that I suppose I think that's so important is because so much of the research in sports medicine, sports nutrition is based on male research. Why does that matter? I suppose females are different. We have changing hormonal fluctuations throughout the month, and I suppose our training demands are going to alter on that. Our female physiology matters. And there's as little as 6% of all research in sports is on female athletes. So I suppose that's where that's coming from, is that, we really need to increase the amount of research and education in the area of female sports. So many females, particularly young girls, will drop out of sports in their teenage years and kind of going into their early 20s for a multitude of different reasons. And oftentimes it's not as supported as their male counterparts. So I think it's really important that we try and help keep our younger athletes and younger female athletes in sports for as long as we possibly can. We know the benefits of being involved in sports and community teams, etc. And I think trying to encourage our female athletes to stay in sport and also encourage kind of higher level research in female sports is really important.
Can I push on that a little bit? Another reason why ladies might leave sport is due to pregnancy. What should ladies be doing when it comes to training while pregnant? Because it's a question Sean has received, I don't know how many times, from clients who might be like, oh, should I be? Should I not be? What should I be doing? Obviously, research is not quite there. If we're only testing 6% of athletes, how many of them are we testing while pregnant? It's myself and Sean have been passed out by a lady. I think she was about 8 months pregnant. She ran past us doing a marathon in our first one, which was a humbling moment for the two of us. But what is, I suppose, the do's and don'ts, and for ladies to consider of being involved in sport while pregnant?
Okay. Well, I think, first of all, being active and remaining active during pregnancy is really important. It can help with a number of things. I suppose it can help increase up and maintain, I suppose, our fitness throughout pregnancy. So going into labor and our postpartum recovery can be that little bit easier. Certainly it can help in regards to our sleep and things like discomfort that, pregnant women will be absolutely familiar with, those back pain and pelvic pains as we progress through pregnancy. It can certainly assist with that. What I suppose I'm very mindful of is that if you have never been active before you're pregnant and you want to start to becoming active, you need to do this in a very, very slowly and in conjunction with your doctor and with your physio to making sure that you're doing this safely. Okay. If you have been active before your pregnancy, certainly you can maintain your activity levels, but the exercises that you may want to do may need to be adapted throughout the course of your pregnancy. Certain sports will be limited during your pregnancy, and again, that is going to be individualized. So you may need to speak to your doctor or obstetrician in regards to that. The big message is, I suppose, don't bump the bump. Okay, so we don't want to be on our tummies. And that's okay.
And from that as well, some people, it's absolutely excellent. It might make sense to someone who's listening. Sean is looking at us like, I've no idea what this means. But it's when we look at, there's another thing as well, because we're talking about amateur athletes from any age up, and I suppose it's another aspect. You hear a lot of people say, this one kind of annoys me, I'm getting old. I'm not able for this kind of stuff. Whereas actual studies say endurance athletes actually peak a lot later. They get a lot better than that. How I want.
So that's time for us. Yeah, is that it, Eric?
Yeah. Sean is older than me. So how old is too old to start? And I think I know the answer, but how should people think about it?
I don't think you're ever too old to start. Never. Certainly for me, when I started getting into this area as a junior doctor, I got so interested in seeing, I was working in the hospital at the time, and I got so interested in seeing patients who were suffering from different medical conditions, and how people who had been very active, I suppose, before becoming unwell and being admitted into hospital, if they were very active, their recovery was much quicker. Whereas those people that perhaps weren't as active or maybe a little bit more frail, their recovery was often a lot longer. And you could see how work with physiotherapists and increasing up a person's exercise capacity could really help improve their overall health outcomes. And it was one of the areas that really got me interested in lifestyle medicine to start off with, and how we move, how we eat, and how we recover can massively impact on our health now, but I suppose our health outcomes. So for me, you're never too old to start. but sometimes we need a little bit of help to guide us in that.
Like jumping into a high rocks.
Like jumping into it.
He's not calling you old, Aisling. He's just saying, he's just taking note that you did high rocks. He's not saying that you
You know what? My peak is coming, Sean. That's it, isn't it?
More of a stab myself at that stage, jump into something new, but anything else from there. I think a couple of things are jumping out at me just throughout this entire conversation. A lot of it, one is the mindset, but two, the point you kind of touched on there. You said you're a doctor, you didn't know it all, you jump back into lifestyle medicine. I mean, I think we have our faith in doctors, they know absolutely everything about everything. I'm trying to get the word in this question now.
No,
Is this your first interview, Sean?
Yeah. You're just as bad as me for asking long-winded questions here. This question doesn't pay off. We're cutting this part out. Is there not a conflict between doctors and what you're trying to do here in terms of medicine and lifestyle to go through kind of fitness and stuff first? Is there a conflict that's coming closer together from what you were learning and studying, becoming a doctor, and then seeing there's a bit of a gap there into what you're doing now?
Well, I think certainly the whole realm of lifestyle medicine is expanding rapidly in Ireland and internationally. Like if we look at a number of the guidelines for many different conditions, one of the first lines will be, in regards to our lifestyle factors. So perhaps changing up our exercise routine or how we eat or how we approach our stress. So lifestyle factors play a huge role in how we manage conditions and I suppose the prevention of it. What my goal is, as I suppose, is to try to bridge that gap between medicine and the unique needs of, say, high-performing athletes. And that's one of the reasons that I decided to set up my clinic specifically for this group. I think when I was looking at this initially, there's an awful lot out there for people who are starting off that have never exercised before, couch to 5Ks. We're all kind of well aware of that. And there's also an awful lot of supports available for the very elite or professional athletes. But it's for that group in the middle who are training at a really, really high intensity, but they're also doing school runs and they're also working full-time jobs. That's where I suppose I find it there's a gap there, and to try and provide evidence-based guidelines for those individuals, I suppose what my goal is, and to try and help bridge that gap a little bit.
Alcohol and sport. How we know because we've done it, the impact it has on sleep, the impact it has on training, but we still do it. Aisling, what are the effects and what should people think when it is coming up to somebody's wedding or another event in their lives and their training goals? Can they limit the impact? Obviously by drinking less, but what is the actual impact of alcohol? I'm looking at Sean.
I was like, were you trying to tell me something here? I take 3 weeks off running for the first time in like a year because I was trying to look after his Achilles, and he's yeah, okay, fair enough. Let's see what's happening here. I'm going running tomorrow. I'm going running tomorrow. I don't care if I lift my wedding day up the aisle. I'm going running.
So you're getting married. What are the effects alcohol are going to have on your sleep and recovery and training? But in general,
maybe you should ask Sean this question. So alcohol will have a number of effects on our body and how we perform. Firstly, I suppose in our recovery. Anyone that wears any kind of a fitness device will see that their resting heart rate will go up a day after if they've been drinking alcohol, and their heart rate variability, which would be a marker of their recovery, will certainly drop down. Strength can be reduced down the day after we've been drinking. We may not repair our muscles and have that kind of growth as we normally would after an episode of drinking. Another couple of things that can happen, I suppose, certainly as you've mentioned, it can disrupt our sleep and it can disrupt our deep sleep. So those things that we talked about early on in regards to like our memory consolidation and our ability to repair effectively are impacted by alcohol. I suppose the other things we think about is it can lead to things like dehydration and cause subsequent muscle cramping, etc. So when we think of alcohol, it's not that we say, it's being mindful of when we're drinking alcohol, what's going on around it, and I suppose being sensible with our choices.
And just you touched on as well, and it can be a hindrance. I have a Garmin on my wrist now that because I ran on a treadmill for 6 weeks said I was doing nothing. Essentially, it didn't give me any data, it didn't track anything, your VO2 max, all of this stuff. How much can we scientifically trust what's on our wrists, or is it just a guide?
Well, I think that the devices can provide incredible insights, but I suppose we have to take that in our own individual context. You know, you can often see people that come in super stressed out by their sleep scores being dropped down, or they're saying, look, I've only got like 9,000 steps, I'm aiming for 10,000 steps, and people can kind of get a little bit stressed out about it. So I think we use them as a guide. Data should help inform us, but not completely dictate what we're doing. So we use the data that we have, which is incredible. And I think year on year on year, the devices are becoming more and more, I suppose, accurate and really effective. But we blend subjectively how we're feeling with the objective data that we have. How do we feel as opposed to how the watch says that we feel?
Aisling, just I want to go back to the social media thing again, and just your experience in GP overall health now, wide ranging, absolute anything from your field in this one. What's that one post or topic you see online on social media or Instagram? You go, right, people have got this completely wrong again. That really is there anything that you're seeing now that really just, you're like, this is the wrong message that has to go out there?
For me, I think it's supplementation and supplement fads. Certainly, as we've kind of touched a little bit on earlier on, every week there seems to be a different dietary fad or a different supplement fad coming out. And a lot of that is coming out without any, can I say, sports nutrition background or healthcare background. So being mindful of the supplements that we're seeing online and what we're being sold online. For me, I think I go back to, as we discussed earlier on, is there an evidence base for its use? And is our nutrition already covering what it's claiming to offer us? And is it realistically going to help us in our situation or not? So I think the supplements, we need to be really careful with what we're seeing online in regards to what's being sold to us from that perspective.
And Aisling, if someone's listening and they want to work with you, how can they get in touch?
So you can contact me on my website. It's www.drashlingfarrell.com, or email me at drashlingfarrell@gmail.com.
Brilliant.
And if you're struggling to find, we will add in Aisling's information on the Wall of Fame now that she has done her wonderful interview with us, and we'll add all the information into the show notes as well. Aisling, it's been so good having you on. It's great to see that this is the way medical professions are going and focusing on. So many thousands of people are doing Ironman, are doing marathons, are training like professional athletes twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, and it's great to see that this is where it's going, and there is outlets to get good advice and good help.
Well, Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure being on with you this evening. Thank you so much.
And that's it for this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast. Myself, Aisling, and Eric. Take care.